Lucy is 17. Her life is a total chaos after her parents got a divorce. She's moving into a small apartment with her mother, lost a friend a couple of weeks ago, she's slipping into a depressive episode, and her grades are dropping. But she likes the sadness. In a way, it comforts her, makes her feel like she deserves things in life, like she's interesting and will get attention. After some time though, she can't take it anymore. After months and months of pain and suffering, Lucy decides to get better. She starts therapy, begins to work out every once in a while, although obviously that sometimes looks like a 10-minute walk. She tries to make new friends, begins to eat healthier, and study harder. But here's the thing. In the attempt to make her life better, Lucy will inevitably, initially, feel worse. Her sadness and depression will most likely flare up in the beginning, and if she doesn't push through this phase of initial pain, Lucy is going to give up. It's a paradox. Everyone always says it's going to get worse before it gets better. It feels like healing itself is suffering, and like progress is regression. And the question I've been asking myself is, why? After thinking about this for a while and doing a little bit of research, I think that there's a connection between the mindset that I talked about in my last video of life gets better if you get worse and this phenomenon. But there's more to it. So in this video, let's talk about the psychology of healing. Chapter 1: Why Chaos Feels Just Right. Lucy feels strangely aligned with everything that's happening around her. The bad grades, messy room, lack of friends, and small apartment. It all illustrates how she feels on the inside. And that, in a way, is comforting. People are able to see her struggles. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be about attention. It can just be about consistency. Like, this makes sense. It fits. Having a reason or a cause and something that makes suffering make sense and have a reason makes suffering more bearable and less painful. As Nietzsche said, he who has a why can bear almost any how. And then of course, pain is familiar. Healing will initially be more painful than suffering because you just don't know it. It's unfamiliar and thus dangerous. Or at least that's what your brain thinks. Another theory on this, and I think the most important one, is something that I talked about in my last video. The mindset life is better the worse you feel can sometimes be true. Obviously you should watch the video, but here's a quick summary of what I mentioned in that video. Sometimes when we're desperate for attention and we can't get it through being better than everyone else and special in a positive way, we swing the opposite way and become worse. And that does, in fact, sometimes get us more attention. So, in a way, the mindset is true. But of course, that's not where true happiness comes from. Like that sense of euphoria and everything is shining. I don't know if really everyone has experienced it. I personally have, and I can tell you that it does not come from that place. And that is because the attention we get is conditional to our suffering. And what most of us who at least have experienced childhood trauma want is unconditional love or unconditional attention. That's why the path to healing is to accept your lack of love and possibly attention, grieve it, and then let go of that mindset. Although, of course, that is incredibly painful, sometimes even borders on impossible. And during that process, it's gonna get worse before it gets better. And why exactly that is, we'll talk about now in regard to Lucy. Letting go of that mindset means letting go of the things that you don't have and maybe never had but always wished to have, craved. Lucy will possibly have to grieve the love from her childhood. Lucy will possibly have to grieve the love she didn't receive from her parents, the loss of her friend, and the physical distance from her father, maybe even emotional now. Trying to heal means, in her case, letting go, and that is very painful. Chapter 2, it starts with action. When Lucy starts to heal, the first step will be objective change. The initial pain that caused her depressive episode and mental decline is still very much present. And that isn't going away quickly. First, she has to do the hard work, objective change, and then, hopefully, the subjective change, the feeling better, is gonna follow. But not always, and only if she does it right. When you're depressed, however, the first few steps can feel like you're pulling a car out of mud because it's just really that difficult. The literal definition of depression is that everything feels much harder. How the hell are you gonna exercise when you can't even get out of bed to take a shower? Which, by the way, exercise is like antidepressants for depression, but only for moderate to light depressive episodes. For severe depressive episodes, medication is usually necessary. I learned this from my therapist, so I just wanted to mention that. And on top of all of that, all of these harmful coping mechanisms that she used before aren't accessible anymore. But even outside of depression, the first few steps to healing are always very hard. You have to actually try now, not live in the comforting but severely painful state of not trying anymore, having given up. Certain things need to be accepted, like for example chronic conditions, you need to learn to live with that, but others don't, because from some things, you can heal. Starting to try again means making room for the possibility to fail, and that always feels very, very dangerous. But as the saying goes, if you never try, you're never gonna know. Chapter 3, Identity. I wanted to include this because it's true for a lot of trauma survivors, especially those of childhood trauma. This might not be accurate for everyone who suffers in general, but I know that for some it is. Oftentimes, your entire identity, or at least a big chunk of it, is based on something that happened in the past or a misbelief. Who are you if not worthless? Who are you if not strange in that uniquely you way? If you've defined yourself as a part of your trauma or something else bad that happened to you, letting go of that trauma or pain can feel like you're losing a part of your identity. Lucy might have internalized the misbelief over the months and years that she's come to understand her parents not loving each other anymore and them splitting apart, not experiencing a lot of love, that she's a sad loner. She sort of built her identity on that. The twist here would be building a new sense of identity and filling those holes with new discoveries about yourself. It's possible, but it's really hard and takes a lot of time because you really have to invest in yourself and try to get to know yourself. And initially, it's gonna hurt worse than when you were actually currently suffering, because first, there's gonna be that emptiness. The emptiness is gonna stay for a while before it gets better, because you need to discover those things about yourself, and that really does take time. Chapter 4, Biology. A quick biology lesson. I am not an expert. I just recently got a B in biology, which is not bad, but I wanted an A anyway. I'm not an expert, but still, here goes. Biology facts. When Lucy finally starts to heal, changing things about her day-to-day life, and moving out of that depressive hole, something in her body is going to change. Biologically, healing is not calm. It's chaotic, loud, and messy. Lucy spent months and months in this survival state, this sort of freeze mode of the nervous system. But when she begins to heal, her nervous system doesn't move straight to calm. Instead, after the shutdown comes the initial chaos and then the calmness. And that middle stage is really uncomfortable. When leaving the state of dissociation and emotional numbness, which Lucy might have found herself in, the body rebounds upwards into sympathetic activation. And that can look like anxiety, racing thoughts, shakiness, nervousness, intrusive memories, or emotional sensitivity. And that isn't a setback, it's just the nervous system trying to test if Lucy is capable and allowed to feel again, if it's safe again. It might also be true that when Lucy gets out of that It might also be true that when Lucy gets out of that possible state of dissociation, her emotions don't gently turn back on, but instead slam back into her. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes hyperactive when suppressed emotions finally resurface. Also, when Lucy initially starts to confront her inner world, which is a part of healing, the brain is going to interpret this as stress or danger. So what does it do? It increases the cortisol hormone, which is the stress hormone. Studies on patients beginning therapies show that the stress hormone rises early and then later on declines once new patterns form. And thus, biologically rebooting yourself can be harder initially. But there's also a very great reward, so let's talk about that right now. Why do we even need to heal? What's the price? It might be obvious because at the end of the day you feel better, but I want to get into this a little bit more. Old structures collapse. I saw a quote on TikTok recently that said, your new life is going to cost you your old life, and I think this is very true in this context. Creating these new beliefs, new structures, and new things that feel familiar is not yet possible for you. Just like ever being a part of your mother when you're a kid seemed impossible, but now, if you're, 25, you feel like you can move out without many problems. At least that's how it is for most people. When you're older, it suddenly all works out on its own. Maybe it's still gonna be a bit hard to, suddenly move out or go to a different country by yourself, but it's going to be much easier and possible. The truth, as we all know about healing, is that it's not fixed, it's not linear, it has its ups and downs, and the first down is going to come at the very beginning, at least for most people. You have to expect feeling worse initially. Sometimes the happiness part comes quicker, and sometimes it takes a while, but usually there's going to be that rough patch in the beginning, and you need to be prepared. And being prepared simply looks like expecting it. Like I said, you don't have to actually do anything, but I feel like you should brace yourself. And then when the pain arrives, it's a sign that this is working. And I wanted to talk about this because I feel like a lot of people go through a stage of healing, obviously, hopefully. I personally am right now. I remember a couple of months ago, I could not even feel simple happiness because I was incapable of it. I was dealing with a lot of stuff from my childhood and reliving all of these memories. And now I'm still feeling bad because of other things that happened in my life, but I am capable of happiness again. Maybe not in this moment because I'm sort of in a depressive episode, but in general, I am capable of happiness again, which I wasn't in the months before I made this video. And so this is sort of supposed to be a bit of hope that if you are in that rough patch right now, it's a sign that it's working. Of course, that's not always the case. If you are in therapy, you should obviously talk to your therapist about this and figure out if you are moving in the right direction. There are other things, other positive signs that therapy or whatever it is you're doing is working. For example, less negative thoughts or whatever. It doesn't always have to start with your mood. Like I said, it usually doesn't, but that's going to be the reward, or at least that's what it's supposed to be. All right, that was it for the video. As you guys might have noticed, I am wearing contact lenses, which is actually sort of pretty nice because I can see better. All right, so this also means that I am blinking a lot, so if you're bothered by that, you're gonna have to just look away because I can't stop it. Yeah, well, I had a lot going on these past few weeks, and I still have, but I wanted to make this video. Leave a like because I really do try really hard with YouTube, but it gets to a point, you know? Like, I had 2 exams last week, one on Wednesday and one on Friday, each 3 hours long, and lots of homework, lots of family stuff to deal with, and social stuff to deal with, and I am tired, but yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you liked it, subscribe if you liked the channel, watch my previous video about that mindset that I talked about in this video because it was really interesting, and I really hope that you guys enjoy this sort of more psychological content because I personally do. It's much easier to talk about because I talk about this a lot in therapy, and to just make videos about this feels like I actually am talking about something that I really know about. I'm talking really quickly anyway. Yeah, see you guys in the next video. Hopefully it'll be next week. If not, my apologies. Please forgive me. Bye!